Hi everybody, welcome to the South of Chilli farm. Today I'm going to give you a short tutorial on how you should prune your chilies back to try and overwinter them for the next season. So here we have a couple of different chili varieties on show. And we've selected these because, as you can tell, they're starting to turn a bit yellow. And overwintering of chilies is not something we do at the chili farm because, as you can imagine, we've got tens of thousands of chili plants, so we start every year. However, we're going to show you how best to try and prune these back to try and overwinter them. The plant I've got in front of me is a red dagger, and as you can see it's starting to turn a bit yellow, but there are a few branches at the bottom with some green leaves which might just give the plant the foliage it needs to survive the overwintering. This, on the other hand, is a much more smaller plant, but even though if it looks a little bit small and weedy, it can probably still be pruned back and overwintered. So what I'll show you now is where you would cut it, probably about 6 to 8 inches from the bottom. There's no hard and fast rule about this, but you can see here where the plant is more woody, that's where it's starting to mature and it's more likely to survive the colder conditions that the winter would bring. And if you measure about 6 to 8 inches, or sort of a palm's length off from the bottom, you just go in and you cut off the top. And of course this top that you've cut off, which has still got fresh chilies on it, can be saved by either freezing them or drying them, and they're perfectly edible. Now that we've taken off the top, what I think I'll do is take off a few of these other branches that aren't adding much value to the plant at the moment, and it's going to reduce the burden on the roots over the winter. Plus the leaves are starting to yellow and might just fall off. So here we've got a plant with just a few branches on it. This is actually dying back, and this might just give you the best chance to survive the winter. This one is again a red dagger, and there's not much left to prune on this. It's actually looking a little bit better than the one I just did, because it's got a nice few little branches on here that might just help it survive the winter. So I would personally take these off with the fruits on them, which are still edible, and any branch that looks as if it might lend itself to flowering, you want to cut those off. And there you go. So now that we've pruned these plants back and they're ready for overwintering, what I thought I'd like to do is show you a couple other chili varieties that will lend themselves well to overwintering and pruning, but also some of the ones that you probably have very little success with. So for example, this plant here is absolutely loaded with fruits. It's been growing in this 2-litre pot all summer. A lot of these fruits, well, all of them are edible. These are, I believe they're scorpion chilies, so second or third hottest in the world. And as you notice here on the plant, there's hardly any leaves at the bottom. It's a completely bare stem. So the chances are that if you were to cut it with a 6 to 8 inch rule from the base, there'll be nothing here for the plant to start off with. So it's likely that this will not survive. This plant is a particularly good one for overwintering. If you notice at the top there, it's already been chopped off. And that's most likely because it got damaged in the nursery tunnel and it had to be cut back. And there's quite a lot of fruits on there still. So what I'd do with this one is I'd take this branch off. And as I said before, the chilies are perfectly edible and they're quite suitable for freezing. I'd actually take this other branch off as well, which has got a few chilies on there. And I would go around and take these chilies off and freeze them for use later on. And then you're left with a nice bushy plant which can be used to overwinter. So just looking in this plant a little bit more detailed, if you notice here, there's actually a flower that hasn't opened yet, and you don't really want to leave that on the plant over winter because it'll just take energy away from the plant as it's trying to survive. So I'd go around and I'd take that off. I'll actually pick that off with my fingers. And then on the other side, there's a couple small immature chilies as well as a couple of flowers as well. So just take those off, and it gives the plant the best chance to survive the winter. So finally, I'd just like to give you a few tips on how best to position these plants for them to survive the winter. Ideally, you want to put them in a warm, sunny windowsill. Something like a greenhouse or a cold frame, or even an unheated greenhouse is not really suitable, because ideally you want to have the plants sitting somewhere where it's at a minimum of 12 to 13 degrees Celsius. And even at that low temperature, there's a chance the plant wouldn't survive. So any higher than that is better. So what you want is a nice warm sunny windowsill somewhere inside, in a conservatory ideally. And here at the chili farm, we're going to try and position these on some of the windowsills in the cafe area as an experiment to see how they do for the next year. So as you can see, these windows are quite large and it's quite bright here. So this gives the plants the best chance of surviving the winter. And what you need to do is keep the soil moist, but not too damp, because the plant's not really taking up that much moisture at the moment. They're not transpiring a huge amount over the winter. So having too much water is going to cause the plants to die back. So you want the soil to be just damp to the touch, but not soggy at all. Thank you.